Thanks, Grace. Good evening, everybody. It is 5:32. I apologize for starting a little bit late. I'm going to call tonight's meeting of the City of Bangor Board of Appeals to order. And we will get started. And the first item on the agenda is introductions. My name is Scott Putty.
Brian Ray.
Rob Ballingall.
Ed Gould, I'm the board chair.
Rachel Thompson.
Don McCann.
David Sevchek, City Solicitor.
Grace Ennis, Assistant City Solicitor.
Thank you, everybody. Item number 2, actually, what I would like to do, if we have the approval of the board, is I would like to add an item to the agenda. And let me give everybody a little background here. Jordan LeBoeuf, who has been a member of the Board of Appeals for a number of years now, he is currently out of state. He's not here tonight. He's out of state for work purposes and expects to be out of state for a few months. He is still a resident of the city of Bangor. He would still like to participate in the Board of Appeals meetings and will be available to, although he's not here tonight, will be available to participate remotely. The city has an ordinance, and if I misspeak it, Dave or Grace, please help me out. But as I understand,
It's a
You-
policy, Ed, sorry.
it's a policy, thank you. City has a policy regarding remote participation that basically says that a board member can participate remotely on 3 occasions, but only 3 occasions, with the exception that if the board votes to allow continued remote participation, then that would be authorized. Did I get that right? Or close enough?
Yeah, close.
So what I would like to present to the board for consideration is to authorize Jordan at future board meetings until he returns from his job assignment to participate remotely. So I guess the first thing that I really have to do is to ask the board for a motion to amend the agenda to consider that item.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
moved in second. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor? It is a vote. Thank you, everybody. So next, let's have discussion and or questions about the issue. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? Since I'm the board chair, I don't want to make the motion. Would somebody like to make a motion regarding authorizing Jordan LeBoeuf to participate remotely until he returns to the city from his work assignment?
So moved, unless you would like me to say the motion myself, in which case I
No,
can.
that's fine. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Comments, questions, discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? And that is a vote. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate everybody's accommodation on that. So the next item on the agenda is training.
That's me. I left little packets for all of you. It's just a handout of what we train you guys on annually. And I'll do a quick run through, but I think most of you have probably sat through one of these before. So to start off, I just wanted to quickly go over your decision-making power. So the Board of Appeals is a public body with decision-making power, and so you're required to make decisions according to established rules and procedure and not based on the class of an applicant. So this refers to due process and ensuring that you're making your decisions based on the packet in front of you and the information presented to you rather than the applicant's race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, physical or mental disability, genetic information, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, cultural group, or political class. And there's a citation in there for you to the Code of Ordinances. Moving on to the Freedom of Access Act. So that's a 2-pronged statute. There's the public records statute and then the public meetings. So just to quickly cover the records prong, records of actions and deliberations of the city and its public bodies are open to public inspection. So it's safe to assume that your correspondence regarding the business of the Board of Appeals, notes taken during the meetings, and other documents related to the Board of Appeals are subject to public inspection. And we recommend that you create an email that you exclusively use for your Board of Appeals correspondence. So if something does come up, then you can quickly just run through that email and forward us whatever correspondence there might be. I do have in here, in your handout, you can just create a Gmail account or something like that, a free account, and then just let the city clerk's office know if you do that so that we can update your contact information with the city. And we may ask to see your communications at any point if we do get a FOA request. And then moving on to the public meetings prong, meetings of the Board of Appeals are advertised and open to the public. This is an example of one of those meetings. So you would open a public hearing for items before you. And just to quickly cover ex parte contacts, the handout kind of goes into it, but you don't want to have contact with the applicant or opponent regarding an application in front of the Board of Appeals. And then executive sessions, that would close the public meeting. That's done through a 3/5 vote of the Board of Appeals, and that's by statute. And you can only go into executive sessions for a limited number of things. One of those would be to consult your attorney based on the rights and duties of the board. And then moving on to the code of ethics, I kind of just tried to outline the important ones for this board. So confidential information, this information would be flagged as confidential. We won't just send you something and not tell you that it's confidential, but we'll let you know, and you can't disclose this information or use this information to advance your own interests or the interests of someone else. Your use of social media, it's your responsibility to ensure that there's no ambiguity, that you're not speaking on behalf of the city. And the Code of Ethics recommends the form of the disclosure statement on someone's social media page. I personally have one just in my bio on my social media that just says like the thoughts and opinions shared on here are my own, and they're not the city of Bangor's. Gifts and favors, members of the board may not accept gifts or favors from people or businesses that are interested in business dealings of the city. Members are also not allowed to accept gifts or favors in exchange for voting a certain way on an item. This accepts, obviously, immediate family can give you gifts, things like that. Representing third-party interests before the city. Members may appear before city boards on behalf of their own personal interests, but cannot appear before city boards to represent third-party interests. And this kind of goes into conflicts of interest and the use of titles and disclaimers and such. So members of public bodies may not participate in the deliberation or vote on any agenda item before their collective body in which they or their immediate family has a financial or special interest other than an interest held by the public generally. So I did include the definitions of financial and special interests because they're a little bit closely related. But if you have any questions about that, please let us know. If it is found that a member has a conflict by the board, that member should step down from the dais and either leave the room or sit out where the public sits. And then use of titles and disclaimers, this is very similar to social media. It's the board member's responsibility to ensure that there's no ambiguity, that they are not speaking for the city. Disclaimers are required when there could be ambiguity regarding the capacity in which an elected or appointed official is communicating. And in your handout, there are a couple of recommended disclosure statements if you are speaking before another board or something like that about your own personal interests. And then there's also a few other ones recommended in the ordinance. I know that was really fast. Does anyone have any question?
Questions for Grace?
All right. If you think of anything, please let us know and we will get back to you.
All right. Thank you, Grace. And I just realized I probably should have done this earlier. We have two new board members. Welcome aboard. And one thing that I'm not sure about, though, is who are regular members and who are alternate members, because we have to figure that out for voting tonight, I think.
Right. The two associate members are on the ends here. Member McCann and Associate Member Party. And it actually says it on the front of the,
Oh.
so we have one regular member missing tonight. So you'll want to, the chair would then appoint which associate member would be voting in that person's absence. Both associate members can participate in the discussion.
Right.
Absent a conflict.
Given that Don has had some experience with us before, I'm going to appoint Don. No offense intended to you, Scott. We welcome you for future meetings, and you've appeared before us before, so I know that you understand the process and procedure, and I'm sure you'll fit right in, and thank you for your service. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the July 23rd Board of Appeals meeting, which has been included in your packet. Does anyone want to make a motion regarding approval of the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
And a second?
Second?
Moved in second. Any comments, questions, corrections for the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor? It is a vote. Thanks very much. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing relating to 1011 Union Street. The applicant is Nathan Woodard for consideration of a variance from the setback requirement of City Ordinance Section 165-73B and the buffer requirement of Section 165-73D. So we'd be happy to hear from the applicant.
I'm not really sure where to begin, other than when I started this project, the first step was a pre-planning meeting with the city. At the time, I had a simple, diagram drawn up by an engineer that was doing the project for Encompass Health, which is next door. At that time, there was quite a few people in the room. Code was there. I think Anja was present and a few others. I was told I would have to do a zone change, which was no big deal. At that time, I was told if, they would be able to extend the 1 foot setback that's been existing there since the property, basically was developed in 45 years ago. Went pretty smooth. Everybody said it should be a very simple project. No big deal. At that point, I did not own the property yet. I was still, in the works of buying it. So it kind of went from there to waiting to do the planning board meeting for the zone change, which went through without an issue. I became the owner of the property, I think in late July, shortly after the planning board meeting. And basically since then, I hired an engineer for the site development, which was Justine. She kind of changed the plan around a little bit to maximize what it could grow for parking in the area, because my parking lot's been congested for years now. It's been a problem. And basically since then, it's been one thing after another that I was not told in the pre-planning meeting. At first, I think we were told it was wetlands, shoreline zone. We needed a 75-foot setback at the back of the lot. The lot's only 100 by 100, so that makes it utterly useless, which we weren't told that in the pre-planning. After, I think, a week or so, they finally realized they weren't reading the code correctly, I guess. And then the new thing was, because we changed the zoning, now we had to have a 20-foot buffer on the existing side where Encompass is building the road where my parking goes up through, which of course we weren't told about that either. It's been one thing after another. I've been told the lot is non-conforming all the way up until after the planning board meeting. Multiple emails that I've attached show that. And then I've been told it's definitely not non-conforming. Everybody spoke erroneously. The town has no notes from the pre-planning meeting, which my understanding is they are supposed to have notes. I have my notes from that meeting. It's been one hardship after another. Right now, this lot is of no value to me. And I got it under good faith of what the city told me, and it's been one thing after another of just polar opposites.
Does anyone?
Chair,
Go ahead.
can I just ask for a point of order?
Sure.
There are two appeals, and I just want to make sure that the record is clear that this presentation is with respect to both appeals. And I wanted to make sure that the board understood that there are two separate appeals that are combined here tonight. It's up to you.
So the first appeal is my existing parking. The big issue now is code enforcement is insisting that they had a meeting with me prior to the pre-planning meeting, which never happened. And supposedly in this meeting, they told me I would have to move my existing parking back 4 feet to comply with a 5-foot setback. When the lot was developed in, I think, 78, somewhere in that range, it was originally with a 1-foot setback. It was approved. So code is now insisting they told me this, which they didn't. That would completely gut my existing parking. If you take 4 feet off that parking lot, no half-ton truck is going to fit in there safely. I mean, you wouldn't be able to park in front of the bay doors, which is virtually all the parking I have now. So the idea that I, had a meeting with code and they said that is just not true. I don't know why I'm being told I have to remove parking that's been there for basically 45 years now. It's pretty wild to me. That never would have happened if I wasn't trying to expand my parking. It's not like they came over with a tape measure one day and said, oh, you're 4 feet over the setback. I don't understand where that's coming from. I've asked the city, is there any proof of a meeting, any correspondence with code? Nothing. They have none. I have no emails. I have no phone call records, no texts, nothing. And they have nothing either. The second variance is for my expanded parking lot, which now would require a 20-foot setback, which again, without having a map here, but to come up to my parking lot and jump in 20 feet is going to be extremely awkward. I wouldn't gain really any parking at all back there, the way the lot's set up. It's only 100 by 100 is now. And that left side where the 20-foot setback would have to be is the side that you drive into. So, and then, like I said, in the beginning of this project, with a pre-planning meeting, I was told they'd be able to grandfather the 1-foot setback so it could extend. Otherwise, it's going to look pretty dumb to come in, basically go up the parking lot 80 feet and then jump in to an extended parking lot. It doesn't match. This parking lot is basically would exist between a brand new road that encompasses building and then a parking lot that's on the other side of me at the laundromat that's been there for as long as I have been.
Thank you, Mr. Woodard. Board members have any questions?
I have a question. I have a few actually. So is code enforcement's insistence on the 5-foot setback on the existing parking lot, is that coming from the zoning change? Is that why they're now insisting that? No.
No, the zone change that I had to do was on the 100 by 100 lot behind my shop. The existing lot that I've had forever, that's shopping in person, S&PS, which it has been. That hasn't changed at all.
So then the stuff about like grandfathering in the 1-foot setback, or is your claim that the lot is the 1-foot setback requirement is grandfathered in for both like the existing parking lot and the new expanded parking lot?
It's the existing has been 1 foot since 78 or so. I was told at the pre-planning meeting that they would be able to grandfather that and extend it onto the new proposed lot, so that way it doesn't have to jump over. But I was certainly never told I would need a 20-foot setback either. But they said, yeah, extending that wouldn't be a problem. So that was kind of the basis of the whole thing.
Other questions?
I do have a couple if you don't mind.
Sure.
So I'm attempting to analyze
Can you-
the
sorry.
effects on your business from a material.
Excuse me,
Sorry.
you need to turn your mic on.
I believe it already was on. I thought you had to hold it. Excuse me. So I'm trying to understand the analysis here by means of a material perspective. You had mentioned earlier that the reduction in parking would lead to a significant loss, as well as another detail that you briefly mentioned, but I don't think was contained in here. You had mentioned that there was going to be a significant reduction in egress for any, you said half-ton trucks coming in to deliver various commodities?
On the existing parking in front of the shop, most of my parking is now in front of the bays 1 through 6. If you take 4 feet off of that, which is what code is now insisting I have to do, there'd be no space to safely pull in a truck if there's vehicles parked there. I mean, I virtually would basically have to lose all the parking in front of the bay doors. Small compact cars could fit, but that's a very minority part of the business compared to, your average size SUV trucks. Extra cab trucks are dime a dozen in the state, obviously. We do a lot of work on those.
Yes.
So it would virtually cut my parking that I already have in half at best.
In half, okay. And has any inland marine organization that delivers any such products to your business, have they effectively stated they do not feel comfortable in making said deliveries to you from that point forward if the setback were to be pushed to a 5-foot mark?
I have a lot of companies now that won't, like semis won't back in. It's an issue. And not that I have a lot of them show to the shop. Most of them are just local parts store trucks, stuff like that, which is not a big deal. But I do have dumpster company. They would have a hard time turning around. A couple other, Safety Clean, larger box trucks, tires sometimes come on larger box trucks. Losing 4 feet would make it pretty difficult.
Understood. Thank you very much.
One other thing that was
Mhm.
brought up too, and I actually mentioned it in the pre-planning meeting. My driveway, there's no exit onto the new road that's being built. And I kind of mentioned it during the pre-planning meeting because my concern back then when Encompass was building the road is if somebody's leaving my lot turning left and now there's a traffic light at what's about to be a 4-way intersection, it could be a little bit of a safety issue if somebody else is also turning left at the same time. It's already a bad spot anyway. There's quite a few accidents on that road. But it was basically nobody really seemed concerned about it. And Encompass doesn't want access on their road, which I understand. My hope was the town would maybe push it because it could definitely be an issue. I would like to have a turnaround there. Then I could have maybe done angled parking, but then I did some research. Angled parking, you actually by code is longer than 90-degree parking, so I would actually lose space by doing angled parking anyway. But I am, there was a mention there later on in emails about going to angled parking, but I brought that up, in the pre-planning meeting. It's a non-starter. I'd lose space. Plus, like I said, I can't have angled parking anyway because I have no access, on an outward angle.
Understood. Thank you once again.
Other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something you were saying. So just so I have a grasp, I think I know where you're talking about. I live on that end of town. And so you're saying there's going to be a road going in at that light down the side of the property. Is that right? And you're saying you won't be able to get like another driveway off of that road? Okay, thank you. Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Other questions? Mr. Woodard, I have a few. And I guess the first question I have is, there's looks like there's a road in progress or in construction next to your property. Do you know what that road is going to service?
Yes.
I'm sorry? Oh, okay. Okay, thanks. So it's a commercial use. Okay. I think most of the other questions I have are so that I can understand the differences between the two parcels and their historical use and, how that fits with what you're being told about what you can do with these two parcels. So I want to start with some questions about the front parcel, which is the one that you've owned for some period of time. Is that right? When did you acquire that first parcel? Okay. 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 So Midas owns the property and you lease it from Midas? Got it. And was it a pre-existing Midas, I don't know if it's a franchise or not, but Midas operation that you later acquired? Okay. And when you acquired the franchise, was that 1 foot setback already in place? Okay.
Sorry, can you hit your mic again?
Sorry, that, the 1 foot setback is on the original plan that the city has from 78 or 79 when it was built originally as a 4-bay shop.
All right. And then you acquired the franchise when, roughly?
99 or 2000.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And so then you have, do you currently own that back parcel?
I do.
Okay. If there were a 5-foot setback, I'm asking hypothetically, I mean, I know that's not the plan that you've submitted. But if a 5-foot setback were to be required, what would I need to ask you another question first. That back parcel is going to be used exclusively for parking? Okay, so if you were required to have a 5-foot setback, what would the difference in the number of parking spaces be between a 5-foot setback and a 1-foot setback?
That's probably a better question for Justine, but I don't
Okay,
know that that would make much of a difference on the plan that you had drawn.
I'm not sure that, and my name is Justine Drake. I'm a civil engineer. I've been working with Nate since he brought this concept to me. So I'm not sure that the number of parking spaces would change as much as the functionality of those spaces, because let's say the existing 1-foot setback were to maintain, then you're now jogging the second level of parking as you move into the property. So that's the bigger issue. And I guess I'll further comment that the lot is already limited to a 70% impervious area ratio. So he's constrained by the number of parking in that manner already. We're just trying to propose something that is sensible in terms of, you know, safety and usability.
so I get that if you kept the 1 foot on the front parcel, I'm happy to have either one of you answer this question. But if you kept that 1-foot setback on the front parcel, but had to have a 5-foot setback on the back parcel, I mean, obviously you're going to have that irregularity and you're going to have a 4-foot extension on the back parcel. But how would that limit your ability to use the back parcel?
First thing that comes to mind is plowing is going to be a lot more awkward, as for one. A 5-foot setback, you know, is the only thing that might be awkward, and I'd have to map it out, is when you drive past the building, it's already somewhat tight. To start a new parking lot and come in an additional 4 feet is going to be kind of an awkward angle, especially when cars are coming in and out versus driving down what would normally be a straight line.
I think I'd add from an engineering perspective, again, that safety component, because if you're driving, your line of vision is headed toward the end of the parking lot, and then you suddenly have to jog over. I think that's confusing for people driving a vehicle. And also, I think if you're just kind of asking for any vegetation in that 4-foot, 5-foot area, you know, people are probably going to drive over that, and there's not really going to be much lawn. And same with plowing. I think it's going to be really difficult to maintain vegetation in that area because people are naturally going to want to drive, you know, forward and assume that the parking extends all the way in line with the other parking that already exists.
So I'm still trying to grasp some of this, and tell me if I'm getting this wrong, okay? It sounds like you could, the geometry would be such that you could have probably the same number of parking spaces with either a 5-foot setback or a 1-foot setback, but it would be more cramped and difficult for cars to maneuver there. Is that
Yes,
right?
I don't believe it would affect the amount of parking spaces physically, but it would be awkward. You know, instead of driving straight down, you'd have to swing.
Go
over
to the
4
right.
feet, right, which, you know, no parking lot really does that, but that'd be the biggest issue. I don't think it would be a loss of space.
Okay. And one thing that I want to get clear in my own mind, Mr. Woodard, is, and I think the process was, when you originally made your application, you had a contract to purchase the back lot, which had not been completed. You didn't actually acquire it until some later point. But you were able to make your application based on your purchase and sale agreement, right? Okay. When you made that application, what was your understanding of the setback requirements on that back parcel?
When I made my application for,
Well, actually, I guess you made your application at a later point in time, once you found out that you'd have to have a 5-foot setback. Is that
you
right?
talking about for the appeal? Or?
Yeah, I asked that was a bad question. I'll start over. When you first decided to buy the property, what was your understanding of the setback requirements on that back parcel?
When I had the pre-planning meeting, I was told at that meeting that they would be able to extend the 1-foot setback on the new expanded parking that I had in the diagram. The one,
And let me just stop you for a second. That pre-planning meeting was with whom?
I know code, I don't remember the name of the person that was code. I know Brian Scannell was there, which I don't know if he works for this city anymore. Aja was there. There was 2 or 3 other people in the room. I don't recall the names, but there was 5 or 6 other people in there.
So was it both code enforcement and planning?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, I interrupted you. Go ahead and finish.
So by the time I got done with that meeting, the only notes I had as far as what I needed to do was a zone change. And like I said, they said they would be willing to extend the 1-foot setback because it made sense, and it does for multiple reasons.
Okay. I think that answered my questions. Anybody have any other questions? Go ahead, Scott.
I do. It looks to me, and I've been in that parking lot before, it looks to me like with moving everything forward to make that 5-foot setback brings everything closer to the building and makes it very difficult to even have any use of the building, really. Because I'm familiar with it. And it appears that if you're required to have that 5-foot setback, it's definitely going to interfere with your business. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would be drastic.
And the lot that you purchased that's behind the building, correct? It's behind the building. And you're required to have what, a buffer from the existing lot beyond what you bought,
Yeah,
20 feet?
what I was told after we did the planning board and it was approved and I bought the lot, I believe Justine was emailed by, I think, Matthew, and kind of out of left field, we were told at first we were gonna need a 75-foot buffer at the back of the lot because it was shoreland zone, which after, that, then it was because we changed the zone, something to do with S&PS being next to G and IS, it requires a 20-foot buffer on that side, which of course we were never told about up front either.
Right,
That's
and,
now the big.
and the 20-foot buffer is what we're talking about
Yeah,
here
that would
also.
make the back lot completely useless.
Right, I see that, yeah. So, okay, I think that's it for my questions, is that it makes it really unusable. Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Just one brief one. Concerning property and casualty, if there were ever to be a point in which some sort of accident were to occur between vehicles associated with customers or vehicles associated with inland marine, do you have any sort of share of liability in that? And if so, do you expect that liability to increase with the implementation of these code enforcements?
I mean, if a customer's driving, then that's, unless I somehow am responsible for the way the parking lot is designed. I'm responsible when my employees are in a customer's vehicle or, any of that type, which is throughout the day. That's nonstop. We test drive a lot of vehicles.
Okay.
So yeah, if something happens, if one of my employees backs into a car because it's parked in an awkward spot when they're backing out of base 6, which is closest to what the extended parking lot would be, that's on me. Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you once again.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Woodard. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak in favor of the application? Hearing none. Is there anyone that is opposed to the application that would like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Jeff Labrie. I'm the code director, City of Bangor. The site plan, the current site plan for the property at 1011 Union Street was approved on March 3rd, 1987. This approved plan included a 5-foot parking setback and a planted buffer along the westerly side of the parking lot. The site was not constructed and maintained in accordance to the approved plan as mandated by section 165, 109 of the Land Development Code. The applicants are seeking site plan approval for the existing parking configuration, which derives from the original approved plan, and the extension of the parking lot. Code enforcement is unable to approve, and it violates 2 provisions of the Land Development Code. Section 165-73B establishes minimum setbacks in a shopping and personal service district with fewer than 100 parking spaces. The required setback is 5 feet. Section 165-73D requires planted buffer yards for parking lots with 5 or more spaces. In this instance, type C buffer yard is required along the 2 property lines abutting the adjacent government, institutional, and service district. This buffer must be a minimum of 20 feet in width to provide adequate screening. Approval would be possible from the code department if the existing site was restored to the 1987 approved conditions and the extension, the rear parking area, were redesigned to meet the required setback and buffer, which is the 20 feet.
Questions?
So you said the original plan, the plan that the city has from the approved plan for the property from 1987
Correct.
has a 5-foot setback requirement on the westerly side. Is that the Union Street side, or is that just the side of the property that is now being developed into a road, but was previously just a property line?
It's the westerly side that is now being abutted to encompass driveway.
I see.
Do you have, I have an actual site plan drawing of that,
Right, okay, gotcha.
and it should state on there 1987.
I don't,
Yeah, I don't think we have that.
yeah, I don't think we have the 1987 one in the record.
I can come up and share that with you.
Sure.
That's a 1987.
Okay. And this is the 5-foot setback here.
The highlighted
Yeah,
area right
gotcha,
here
gotcha.
would technically be this right here, which is a 5-foot required setback.
Yeah.
And then within
This is
that,
20-foot setback on the rear of the property here.
correct, and there was the screening was also, the plantings were also incorporated within that.
Excuse me, we probably have the mics on if there is discussion.
The screenings would be incorporated within that 5-foot setback.
Okay, okay. Gotcha.
Did you want to make that part of the record?
We probably should, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Pass it. David.
So look at.
Yes, yeah.
Down here.
So while we're looking at it, oh,
Fair enough.
okay. Anybody else have any other questions? That's
Yes, I did. Was the buffer ever installed? The 5-foot buffer from 1987?
It doesn't appear to be. If you look on the parcel viewer, it's hard to say exactly. The parcel viewer is not exactly accurate.
Does it appear that this was creep, or was it originally just 1 foot?
It's hard to say. I mean, it really is. So,
And this has been operating with the 1 foot setback for a long period of time, right?
well, it was approved in 87 site plan for a 5-foot setback. So we're assuming that's what it had. And it also was approved for parallel parking, not the regular parking.
On the 20-foot setback in the rear, will that, in your opinion, that would be a huge chunk out of the available parking space, correct?
It definitely does stick out another additional, if there is an actual 5-foot setback there now, it would, an additional 15 feet from there, so.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I had one question about the setback. I'm sorry, not the setback, the screening. Are there any provisions in the code about screening for a 1-foot setback?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Jeff. Does anyone else want to speak in opposition? I'll give you a chance in a moment. Anyone else want to speak in opposition to the application? Hearing, oh, no, I'm sorry. Come on up.
I don't want to speak in opposition. I just wanted to provide clarification since I've been involved with this for a while. I actually had looked at the historical photos of this property going back to the 70s, and it appears the pavement has been the same since the 70s. So I just wanted to provide that.
Questions?
Just that's Anya Colette.
Sorry. Yeah,
planning
I'm
officer.
planning officer. I'm Anya Colette.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Questions? All right, thank you. Mr. Woodard?
One thing I'd like to add is the original plan from 78 does, and Anya dug it up and sent it to me. It's in my email. It shows a 1-foot setback being approved with normal, like 90-degree parking spots. This 87 plan, I don't really understand why, but the building had 2 bays added onto it because they outgrew the business. So they were going to have a 6-bay shop instead of the original 4-bay. When they did that plan, for some reason, the plan shows them going from a 1-foot setback to a 5-foot setback and then having parallel parking instead of, your normal parking spots, which, I mean, doesn't make any sense to go and expand the building and then limit your parking even more than what was originally there. And obviously, who parallel parks in today's world? It's, even in 87, nobody liked it. But it made no sense from the original 78, 79 plan to go from normal parking to, okay, now you're here to expand your business, add 2 more bays, but we're going to throttle back the parking. But again, I wasn't involved in the business back then. That was a long time ago. Since I've been involved, it's been the way it is now. And it's been that way since, 78 or 79.
Questions for Mr. Woodard? And again, I just want to make sure I've got the timeline clear. This 1987 site plan, that was before you acquired the franchise. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Does anyone else want to be heard on the application? Hearing none, I will close the public portion of the public hearing and turn it over to the board for discussion. And just to structure our discussion, I think we should address the 2 variance requirements, variance applications separately. And why don't we start out dealing with the variance request for what I've been calling the front parcel. So I'll open the floor to board members for discussion.
I just want to clarify my understanding. So for the front parcel, is it true that the only variance needed for that is the 1 foot? Or I guess I'm trying to clarify where the variance is needed on the front parcel. Which setback are we talking
Well,
about?
it's been confusing for me regarding whether or not this is a pre-existing non-conforming use, which I don't think a variance would be required for, or an actual variance from the ordinance requirements. And I think Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, or Grace? I mean, I think since what I'm hearing is that it's the position of code enforcement that there needs to be, or at least that 5-foot setback would be required on that front parcel, that it's within our jurisdiction to consider as a variance.
And we're talking about I think the western side where that new road's going, and that's where we're talking about. that
Right.
strip.
So I
Okay.
mean,
Not the
essentially,
Union Street, not the Union.
Right.
Okay.
yeah, and so essentially what we're talking about is whether or not Mr. Woodard should be allowed to continue to have that 1-foot setback rather than a 5-foot setback. Discussion? Scott?
It looked to me like, as this lady said, and I forgot her name already, I'm sorry.
Anya?
Anya, that, according to what she said, that going back as, with many pictures, it's always been a 1 foot of setback. And so it appears to me it's always been non-conforming. Is that right, David?
I think that needs to be asked to code enforcement.
Is that right, Jeff? That's always been non-conforming?
I would say with the 87 site approval, I guess technically it would have been illegal.
Mhm.
So, because they should have been with the approved site plan of 87, it should have been,
So it's always,
it should have been made to the 5-foot setback with the parallel parking.
okay, got it. So it's always been non-conforming. Okay. And, but that being said, if the variance isn't allowed, it interferes with his business, right?
It appears that way, yes.
Thank you. And as far as the variance for the back lot, if that he's already purchased, right? You've already purchased the land.
Can I make a suggestion? Let's talk about the bat.
Okay,
It's confusing enough as it is, and
okay.
I think it'll be easier for us to look at
All right, so we'll take the first,
yes,
right, which is the 1 foot
yes.
setback. Okay.
If that's okay with board member, okay.
It would appear to me then that if it's going to affect his business, and it's always been that way, that my opinion is it should be granted.
Other comments,
Can I ask a question? Chair?
please?
Is there a 20-foot buffer issue that comes into play with respect to the front lot?
No, I think
Where's
that was
the-
just the back lot.
As I've looked at the application and listened to the testimony tonight, I think that the only 20-foot setback that was raised related to the back lot, which was, I think, later, no, I shouldn't say waived, but the city said didn't apply.
I thought the city said that the 75-foot setback.
It was, you're
Yeah.
right, Rob, thank you for the correction, you're right. To the new parcel, okay, thanks for that clarification, and thank you, Dave.
And I'm not asking about a setback, though. There's a buffer provision.
Buffer, oh, yeah, you're right, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
That's what I was asking about.
okay.
The planting requirement, that only applies with respect to the back lot? That,
But I don't think Mr. Woodard's asking for a variance on that. Right, okay. We all good on that?
yeah, as long as everybody's and has,
Things clear, because I've talked to Brenda and code, and primarily that interpretation was coming from her. The site plan from 1987 shows the vegetated buffer in that 5-foot setback. So her interpretation was it needed a variance from both vegetated buffering and the 5-foot setback for the existing parking. And then when you're looking at the back lot, it would need a variance from the 20-foot buffer requirement and the 5-foot setback. Does that make sense?
So that if we're going to grant a variance on the front lot, it's got to be both for the setback and the buffer.
And vegetated buffering.
I got it. Okay. Thank you.
And I think if I may add, that's what I was hearing when you were asking about, is there a 1-foot kind of buffering
Yeah.
provision
Yep.
available, which kind of, what can you put in a foot anyway?
Yeah. Dave and Grace, I also have a question. I want to make sure that as we look at this, that we're looking at the appropriate variance provisions under chapter 16511. We're looking at 16511B, not C, correct?
Correct. This is not a practical
Okay,
difficulty appeal. It's a variance appeal.
okay. Anybody else have any other general comments or questions? Yeah, go ahead, Don.
So he had mentioned that he had gone to the planning board to change his code designation. If he hadn't have done that, would that have changed anything about him now
I think that's with respect to the back lot.
to the back? lot?
Right,
That was my
that's my
understanding, is that-
understanding
that
too.
the second parcel, the newly acquired
Okay.
parcel, was the one that had to be rezoned.
Okay,
So I think the one we're talking about now, that zoning wasn't changed.
okay, okay. So this is, okay.
Okay. Yeah. So let me just itemize the findings that we have to make and then open up discussion on that. So to grant a variance, we have to, the record must show that A, the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. B, the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood. C, the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality. And D, the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant, or a prior owner. And what we should do is we should address each one of those questions in order.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
It's, and maybe I'm wrong about this, or others don't share my view, but it seems to me that it's clear that criteria B, the applicant has met criteria B, C, and D. The only question mark that is in my mind is whether the applicant's met criterion A. And if others agree with that, perhaps we, like if we're going to vote on each of these independently, that we deal with the easier ones, the lower bars first, and consider the more difficult question last. But that's just my view. I'd be interested in hearing what others think.
Go.
Yeah, the only thing that stands out to me, I think generally I agree with that. I think a tricky clause here is or a prior owner in subparagraph D.
Yeah,
I think that's where I think some problems might come up.
Yeah, and I think we need to at least have some discussion
Yep.
on that. So why don't we take them in order?
Sure.
So the first issue is whether or not the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. And what I've taken from the, I don't want to guide the discussion. Does anybody have any comments that they want to make on that particular provision?
I personally would just like a clarification of terms, specifically the phrase reasonable return. Exactly what does that entail?
Dave, I'll let you answer that one.
It means a reasonable return on the investment for the property.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to double check on that. Thank you.
Comments on subsection A?
So we're talking about the original setback, the 5-foot setback from the west side of the property. And so, I mean, if we're just thinking of the property without the back parcel that Mr. Woodard has recently purchased, I mean, to me, it does seem like, given the testimony we've heard from him, that it really would affect his ability to gain a reasonable return on his business, seeing that it depends on the ability to have a lot of cars parked in those lots. I mean, it seems to me in light of that, that he's met criterion A.
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines, Rob. I think particularly the fact that this is a property used for vehicles incoming and going in and out and in and out. I think, reasonable doesn't mean, can't use it for anything. It's reasonable. And I think under these circumstances that it really turns on the critical aspect of egress, really.
And once again, just a clarification in terms, when we are discussing land, it is also implied that we are also including buildings and any other ameliorations to the land as part of that?
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Yeah, I mean, as I look at the evidence, if Mr. Woodard were required to increase that setback, he's going to lose a lot of parking spaces and not be able to service as many cars and customers. And he's made an investment in this property based on an existing business because that's the way that the business was run prior to his acquisition. And so if we didn't grant that variance, we'd be requiring him to take significantly less on his, return on his investment. So any other discussion? So why don't we vote? Why don't we have a discussion on each element and then have a vote on each one? So let's take a vote on section 1A. Land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. Does somebody want to make a motion whether or not the applicant has met that provision of the ordinance?
I will move that the board finds that the applicant has met the requirement that, excuse me, the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Did second, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that is unanimous. Section 2 is the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood. So I'll open the floor to discussion on that element.
Yeah, I think I'll just start by saying for the business that it is kind of a narrow strip. I think it is definitely unique to the property. And I think given the history of the property in particular, I definitely find that the situation is because of the unique circumstances, not just the general conditions.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much more for me to say on that, but
Okay, any further discussion? Somebody like to make a motion?
Motion to approve the subsection 1B that the applicant has met the criteria that the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood.
And a second?
second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. It is unanimous. Subsection C, the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality.
Well, I think granting the variance would maintain the status quo.
Right.
So,
Not granting.
so I definitely think, yeah, it wouldn't alter the character of the locality. And I think knowing that area furthermore, it's consistent with what we know of the area.
And a additional clarifying question. When we are referring to the essential character, how I am understanding is that this variance will not affect the essential character of it being a commercial property. Like it's not as though we're transforming it into a residential property by means of this change.
Right.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Further questions or discussion? Motions in order?
I move that the board finds that the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality.
And a second?
I second that.
A second, further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Item D, the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner. We'll open the floor on that issue as well.
So, I mean, if by prior owner, we mean the applicant's father, then it sounds like his father acquired the property in 1999 or 1998. So the hardship seems to be the result of whoever owned the business in 1987 and applied for the new site plan, right? Which it sounds like the applicant was unaware even of even of its existence. So it does seem as though the hardship is not the result taken by the applicant or at least the immediate prior owner. But it does seem to be the result of a prior owner. So I suppose that's the tricky part.
I think part of what makes it difficult is there is a lot of gaps in what happened over the course of decades, I think. You know, we know, at least we've heard tonight, that even looking back at images, it's been this 1 foot since the 70s. Whatever happened in 87 is a mystery to, it seems, everybody. And so do we even know that it was an action taken by a prior owner? Do we know that? I don't know that. So I think there is still some ambiguity there.
In other words, I would take that to be a preponderance of the evidence, just like it would be in any other sort of like civil case of any kind.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Okay, not saying that that is 100% a parallel, but that's the way I'm supposed to understand it, just generally speaking.
Here's the way that I analyze this, because I think this is kind of an unusual situation, because as I think, based on this record, which is not entirely clear, and all we can make this decision on is the record that's before us, is that, and I'll sort of work backwards. Mr. Woodard acquires the franchise, and the 1 foot setback has been in effect for years before that. Apparently, I think it was 87, that must have been when the business was expanded to add additional bays. And what the site plan shows is a 5 foot setback rather than a 1 foot setback, which apparently has been the status quo for this property from the time that it went into business. So the meaning and or significance of this 1987 site plan is entirely unclear to me. So, you know, there's nothing on this record that tells us that the granting of the site plan in 87 was conditioned on increasing the setback from the pre-existing 1 foot to 5 feet. I mean, we just don't know what happened there. So it's not clear to me, and there's also no evidence on this record that in the almost 40 years of history that we're talking about since that site plan was granted, that there's been any enforcement action by code enforcement to say, you know, this is out of compliance with the site plan that we granted. So on this record, I don't see that there's evidence that the hardship was the result of an action of a prior owner. So that's the way that I analyze it. And you know, frankly, it's hard to tag Mr. Woodard with responsibility under that set of facts, I think.
I would also add to your point that the difficulty in all this, for me anyway, has less to do with a proper historical analysis and more of a inability to establish a historiography between the various changes in code enforcement regulations over the course of several decades and how it affects everything now. We are lacking the ability to make a appropriate interpretation, let alone the inability to actually see the facts of these changes in front of us.
Any other discussion? Then a motion's in order.
I'll move to find that granting the variance that the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner.
Is there a second?
Excuse me.
Yeah, go
On
ahead.
that motion, I just want to make sure it should be stated in the positive that
Oh, pardon me.
that either the applicant has satisfied the burden to show that the hardship is not the result of the action. Is that what
Yeah,
you wanted to say?
that is exactly what I wanted to say. Yeah, there you go.
And is there a second?
Second.
Moved to second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. Okay, so, Mr. Woodard, we have, oh, wait a minute, now we also have to vote on granting the variance, correct?
Correct. One more vote
If I may,
with respect to the front property.
To the front property, right?
and if I may, we're talking about the setback and the buffering.
Yes,
Okay, just wanted to make sure that this is.
yes, yep, good
Okay,
point.
great.
So would someone like to make a motion regarding the granting of the variance on both the setback and the buffering?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the variance. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we have voted to approve the variance on the front parcel. So let's move on to the question of the back parcel. And why don't we go through the same analysis as we did with the front one and start out with subsection 1A, whether the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted.
If I, again, may, Ed,
Please.
would we want to separate out the 20-foot buffer and the 5-foot setback as separate analyses, or is this again a holistic variance from both as one analysis? Does that make
Well,
sense?
yeah, it does make
Okay.
sense. And I guess where I'm struggling with, and maybe needs some help from Dave and Grace, is that if we're going to grant a variance on the 5-foot setback, then practically speaking, you can't have the 20-foot buffer. So do we need to include both of them?
Well, with respect to the front lot, you voted that the applicant had satisfied the elements for variance and that the variance was granted with respect to both the setback and the buffer. And you also voted on each element and with regard to the setback and the buffer. So I would just suggest that you proceed in
Do
the same manner.
Okay. Sounds good. So let's open the floor to discussion on whether or not the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. Go ahead, Scott.
It's okay for me to comment, right?
Oh, absolutely. You just can't vote.
Yep, okay. It appears to me that the new parcel of land will have no value to the current owner if this isn't granted. In other words, he's bought the land, paid for the property, and he needs to have this for parking. And it also would appear to me that if we didn't grant the 1 foot versus the 5 foot, that it would just make it very odd looking amongst other things, and would make no real sense because we're not really doing anything different. Just the first lot will have 1 foot and the second lot would have 5. Besides looking odd, it wouldn't make any difference. And that's what I'm looking at. And as far as the buffer goes, it appears that he needs that variance from the buffer in order to accommodate the amount of parking spaces that he needs, that his business has grown into. Thank you.
Yeah, on top of that, I would also add, for me, I think the safety factor is significant. Again, when you have a bunch of vehicles coming and going, that weird angle that would be created by having one setback but not the other, I think definitely goes to, I think, not having a reasonable return, because it introduces more problems in some ways, I think. Just to add on to everything that you've already said.
Other comments or questions? Let me play. Yeah, I'm struggling with this, and so let me play devil's advocate. What I heard in this record is that understanding that you'd have this odd jog out with the 5 foot setback, that would not necessarily limit the number of spaces, although it would make it more, I guess, awkward. I'm sorry?
I think it would tighter. It'd be
Harder,
get it
yes, yeah, to get in and out, but not necessarily impossible. I realize that certainly would be inconvenient. Potentially presenting some safety issues. But I'm not sure that disqualifies the parcel from yielding a reasonable return. So what I'd like to hear from my fellow members is dissuade me from that interpretation, because I'm struggling with it. And I've often said at meetings in the past that I'm a process guy, and what's important for me is that we treat everybody that comes before this board the same. And that we try to be, and that the way that we do that is we be guided by the words of the ordinance itself. So, convince me that the evidence that's in this record does not allow Mr. Woodard to yield a reasonable return from the property. Because I'm willing to be convinced.
I think if you look at the images we have here, so there's item 10 and item 1. I think in both of those items, and I think this is in the packet that Mr. Woodard submitted, you can see images of the back parcel there and of the planned parking he wants to construct, but also there's this dashed line in image 1 or item 1 that corresponds to the shaded green area in item 10. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the area that code is requiring for both the buffer and the setback. Oh, okay. The green shaded area, is that what you're talking about? Oh, yeah.
You should come to the mic to make sure that the record can hear you.
On item 10, the green shaded area at the back is wetlands. But it's like 2,600 square feet. DEP said anything under 4,300 square feet, I don't need permits for.
So that's not, that green shaded area, that has nothing to do with the required buffer.
It's just showing
Okay.
where the wetlands
Okay,
was,
I
that's
see.
all.
Okay. I mean, it's kind of hard to get the dimensions of that back parcel there, but just looking at it, I mean, if there has to be a 20-foot buffer on the back of it and a 5-foot setback on the side of it, doesn't leave much for parking, right? Like it sure seems to reduce. I mean, it's hard to see what it would actually be, but I think that gives you a sense. I mean, I suppose there is a little in item 1, you can see there's a little space there, 24 feet between the two sides of the proposed parking lot expansion. So I guess that gives you some sense of what a 20-foot dimension would be, but yeah.
Other discussion or comments?
Yes, and I agree with you. It would definitely be, I would see that it's would be a hardship, because it would definitely reduce the number of parking spaces for land that he's purchased, making an assumption that he would be able to accommodate all those parking spaces. So it's to me, it's definitely would be a hardship.
Can I ask a question, Chair?
Sure.
Does the record show the dimensions of the back lot?
I think it was 100 by 100.
Okay.
That's my memory. the
So-
applicant told us.
Okay, so a 20-foot buffer and a 5-foot setback within a 100 square foot? Is that what we're saying? Lot, okay.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
I think that, you know, despite what may have been stated as not losing any spots, there's also in the record just how big the lot is compared to how much would be taken up
Yep.
by the buffer and the 5-foot buffer, the 5-foot setback.
Yeah, I was gonna add, since we're taking these things together, you know, the buffer as well as the setback, it's not just a matter of the setback. So I think when you're looking at those two things happening simultaneously, it cuts into a huge fraction of this parcel that I think, Scott, to your point, was purchased at least in maybe some reliance on the understanding with the city that this would be doable. And again, I think the further to your point, Ed, you know, the ordinance says reasonable again. And I think we've seen ordinances that say, you know, no return, no reason, no return, or, you know, much stricter language. And I think we're talking about reasonableness here, not absolutes.
Other discussion? Go ahead, Don.
If you see how this is laid out in his parcel of land, everything in the front here is for compact vehicles. And obviously, he's going to be needing room for larger vehicles in the back. So by taking up 25 feet of that, you're not going to be able to put anything longer than compact car. Or maybe even a standard car.
Thanks. Other discussion? Hearing none, would somebody like to make a motion?
I will move that the board finds that the record shows that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Subsection B, the plight of the owner is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood. Open that up for discussion.
I think the same considerations from our review of the front or original lot apply to the new or back lot.
Any other discussions? Is someone like to make a motion?
I will move that the board finds that the record shows that the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood.
And a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Subsection C, the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality.
I think the same discussion applies, you know, it's the abutting parcel, so.
Anybody would you like to make a motion to that effect?
I would love to make a motion to that effect. I move that the board finds that the record shows that the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality.
And a second?
Second?
Second, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And item subsection D, the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner.
Again, see above.
I think we do have a little bit of difference in this one because this is a recently acquired property. I don't think that's a disqualifying factor because I don't think the hardship in this case, I don't know that the applicant took any action that created this hardship.
Right.
But I do think it is distinguishable from the front
Yes.
parcel.
Yeah, I mean, again, at least the way that I look at it is that I don't think you can acquire a property knowing that the use you want to put it to will require a variance and then ask for the variance. In other words, if you go into if you acquire the property with the knowledge that it doesn't comply with the ordinance, but go ahead and purchase the property anyway, and then ask for the variance, I don't think you meet D.
So here, it's it becomes relevant, the sort of unfortunate set of back and forth that Mr. Woodard had with the city.
I think that's right. Which sort of puts us in a difficult position, or maybe it doesn't. But I think we ought to at least consider whether or not that puts us in the difficult position of trying to be fact finders and trying to assess which versions of the fact more likely than not correct. I mean, I'd like to avoid that if we can. So,
My,
go ahead.
my immediate thought, when you said that was that I don't know from the record that it's not at least clear to me that the applicant was under the impression that he would have to get a variance. I think that's part of what's ambiguous in the record is whether or not he would need a variance. I don't know that that was actually communicated because I think there was this back and forth about whether it's a pre-existing non-conforming law and that could be extended. And I mean, if you're not a legal expert, which most property buyers are not, I would say, yes, I think it's incumbent if you're going to buy a property that you look into these things, but I don't know that that is necessarily disqualifying under these circumstances. But I do think, to your point, Ed, that gets more into fact finding, which is it is sticky. I mean, that is just true.
I would like to add to that sentiment, just based on what I'm seeing here in terms of the items that have been established as part of this appeal. The original February 13th pre-planning meeting, we don't have anything about that in the items provided by Mr. Woodard, as I understand it. Therefore, the one fact that I have in front of me regarding what has been established in terms of the necessities to increase the setback or implement a buffer is based on this email established Thursday, August 14th, which is after the fact. Now, if it is possible to obtain additional facts of that pre-planning meeting on February 13th, that would be lovely, as I think it would allow us to remove any of these unknowns that are certainly plaguing this part of the conversation. But until that happens, I don't know.
I think what we do have a record of is that there was no record kept of that pre-planning meeting, right? So we know that we can't get that information. We can't get like a proof of what happened, right? So we can't.
Yes, as far as my understanding, that is where we're currently at. However, if there is any possibility to obtain something, that way the burden of proof can basically lie in Mr. Woodard's favor, then it would lead to a greater sense of assurance on our part in terms of making a decision.
Chair, could I make a
Please.
comment? I just
Yeah.
want to remind everyone that the evidence in the record is not just the paper evidence that you have before you, but it's also the oral testimony that was presented tonight. That's part of the evidence. You have the applicant's testimony and the rest of their testimony. That's part of the record, and there was testimony about that meeting.
And I guess my additional question of that, would that be available for board review and any potential facts and findings from this point forward?
I don't understand your question.
Would it be possible for us to review that as part of the additional fact-finding process?
To review
The oral testimony,
I'm talking about the oral testimony that you just heard tonight,
okay?
that you just heard it.
Okay,
So, yeah, I mean, that you can review that as part of your fact finding.
okay,
I think part of your function is fact finding when you have an element like the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner. I think part of your function is to find facts based on the record, and the record includes both the paper that you have presented and the testimony that was given tonight. So.
no, that's fair. Thank you.
Yeah, I think to that point, I think the applicant presented in his testimony tonight that it was not his understanding that he would need a variance. That is how I heard his presentation, is he had these communications with various staff, and it not at any point until after the property had been acquired was it made clear, or not even necessarily clear, was it communicated in some capacity that some sort of variance would be required. So I think for that reason, I think the hardship comes more as a result of, I don't know, miscommunication, if as part of it at the very least, but I don't think it's action necessarily taken by the applicant in this case.
Oh, go ahead, Scott, I'm sorry.
I think it's pretty obvious that the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or the prior owner. Certainly isn't the prior owner, but it's to exactly what you said. It has really nothing to do with anything other than the testimony we've heard tonight. Thank you.
Here's the problem that I have. And Dave, help me out if my analysis is wrong, but if I buy a home in a residential neighborhood and I want to have a chicken coop in my backyard and sell eggs out of my backyard, which I think is prohibited in a residential area. But I don't realize that when I buy the house. And I buy it on the misapprehension that this is something that I can do. And I'm then told by code enforcement, you can't have those chickens and that rooster in this zone. And I then apply for variance based on that. I don't think that my misapprehension of the law that applies to my parcel meets subsection D. And to take that analogy to the present case, there's no evidence on this record that when Mr. Woodard entered the purchase and sale agreement for that back parcel, that he had any knowledge one way or the other about the setback requirements until he started his discussions with the city. But it is pretty clear that at that time that the ordinance would have required a 5-foot setback. So tell me if, my chicken coop analogy is off base.
Well, your chicken coop analogy is a little more complicated in real life with regard to allowing chickens to be kept. But I will say that it appears part of the record tonight that the applicant testified that he wanted to purchase that back lot for the purpose of adding parking to his business. That was the reason that he purchased the back lot. When you're looking at and he also had testimony about discussions that he had with the planning office and the city. And I understood that to be before he made the purchase. And there was testimony about what was said to him. When you look at the element, the 4th D here, it says the element that has to be satisfied is that the applicant has the burden of showing that the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner. Now, when you look at that element, with respect to the front lot, when you voted on that, you had to be concerned about the actions taken of the previous people that either leased or owned that lot. With regard to the back lot, I don't think you need to be concerned about any prior owner, because the prior owner didn't purchase the property for that purpose. This applicant did. And so in that sense, it's a little easier on the analysis because you don't have to wonder about a prior owner. At least that's the way it appears to me. So, your fact finding is the action that this applicant took. Did that result in the hardship or not? I mean, when you take into account, you got to find the facts, what actually occurred. I don't know that there was any testimony that was contrary to what the applicant testified to as to what happened before he bought the property.
Right.
So I guess you find the facts and then you apply the facts as you find them to the law, which is this element. And that's the best I can.
Okay, that's
help
helpful.
with.
Dave. Thank you. Other discussion? Hearing none? Someone want to make a motion?
I move that the board finds that the record shows that the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's a vote. So now we have to take a vote that regarding satisfying all of the elements of the variance. Someone want to make a motion?
I move that the board finds that the applicant has satisfied all elements of the variance.
And a second? Oh, As,
The motion include that well, the motion be whether the that the variance is granted with respect to both the setback and the buffer requirements in the ordinance.
I move that the board finds that the applicant has met all four elements of the variance with respect to both the setback and the buffer. Yeah. Thank you.
and a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. That's a vote. So the variance is granted on the back parcel as well. Last item on the agenda is other business. Does anybody have any other business to bring before the board? Hearing none, would someone like to move to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
And a second?